so loud in here.
You going to get someone to sit on one of those things? You're going to stand up, are you? All right, let's... Silence! Actually, is it even filming?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, come over there then. So, you guys haven't followed a program before, you've just trained, which was the plan. I remember the video I did with the boys last year and here. It was like, just get time on the barbell, just exercise, know how it feels, build some conditioning. So now what we're going to do is put a timeline across the top of this and work out when one phase is going to change to the next. It's pretty straightforward. But what we don't know at the moment is when the races are going to be. We're going to go on his season for now because you'll both definitely start the same and then you might do this as the off-season goes through. But it'll be worth it anyway just to plan yours. But do we know when the first World Cup is?
I should know.
It's May usually at Fort William.
Yeah, he'll probably start to get some early season races as well to get used to icons, so potentially February.
Okay, right, that's an interesting point, right? Because you might sacrifice the early races to peak for the later ones because they're more important. And you might think, okay, I won't be peaking for the British rounds there, but I'm going to sacrifice that and just run off talent. You'll still be in great shape, but you want to be getting to the absolute peak of your physical condition when the biggest races matter. So should we say May? Yeah? All right, so first World Cup there is in May. We'll start this in November, I guess. So November, December, January, February.
It's likely out for minimum 4 weeks in October.
Yeah. So in theory, you could start it November or middle of. So it'll be November, December, January, February, March, April. That's 6 months. All right, so let's try and divide this into 6 months now. It's about there. Right, let's get a different colour. What colour?
Date for the first World Cup is 3rd, 4th of May.
Perfect.
That's in for May.
April. Cool, and then that'll be May with the first World Cup is here. So, there's like natural breaks in the off season, isn't there, with Christmas and things, which you might, I know you both got home gyms actually, haven't you? It doesn't have to be such a big break. So there's Christmas there. Actually, let's change the pen. Let's change the colour of the pen. No, there's Christmas there, New Year. Sometimes when there's like a natural change, it's a decent time to change a phase anyway, but we'll have to see. January. You're away on a couple of ski trips, you, Steve?
No, he's got exams just after half term in February.
But that'll be less time in school, right?
Not sure.
Remember, the training sessions are only sort of 40 minutes. I don't think that'll... yeah, but if you're actually away...
No, we're not. No, I don't think we're going away.
So what about you, Eno? Are you away for any period of time between now? Forget the races for now. Are you away for like a family holiday or something? Okay, cool. So what we're going to work out is how big of a base we can lay down. We're going to have to start tapering there because the race is going to be 6 weeks away, so you have to start doing less there. So, like I said, this is just whiteboard stuff, right? We're going to pencil in here and get a scaffolding to work from, but in fact, it's going to be changing because, if we put in something cement and I planned 6 months training and then said, off you go, Nathan, you might break a collarbone there, or Charlie gets a fucking girlfriend there, or something, something that ruins it for everyone. I'm always only about a week or two ahead of you, so the thing is always going to be fluid and changing, but it's nice to get a scaffolding to work from. All right, so let's pencil it in, right? So November, you're going to be recovering, so building is great then anyway, hypertrophy stuff, not any real heavy lifting, right? Just trying to build some muscle. So we'll try and build some muscle. Let's just say between now and the middle of January, right? Call that hypertrophy. All right, so we've got about 10 weeks here to build some muscle. Now over here, let's work from the end. Let's change the color again. Over here is going to have to be kind of athletic stuff. No, sorry, I'm going to come back. So hypertrophy, strength and power to about the middle of the way through March, I hope. strength and power. And then after that, we'll call it athletic training with stuff like plyometric and things. So let's talk about this, right? So hypertrophy is quite taxing on the body. It requires a few days recovery from each muscle group. And your training splits there look like chest and triceps, back and biceps, legs, shoulders, those type of things. There will still be probably 1 in every 6 workouts, a strength workout where you just get some weight on the bar. Whereas the hypertrophy stuff is generally light and you're trying to burn up the muscles, right? But there will be probably, in the hypertrophy one, probably 5 hypertrophy and 1 strength and power, right? Just to keep your exposure to it, so it's not going to be 10 weeks before you get anything heavy in your hand. You know, probably the strength and power stuff we'll do when we're here, right, together, because that's the best. That's what requires the most coaching, is the heavy stuff, and it's always good when I'm there. And then strength and power is all heavy. You're going to pretty much probably abandon hypertrophy altogether and just go straight into strength and power. See if you can get your strength up. We know where you are now. You're at about 17, you're at about 60. I don't think that will drop during a hypertrophy phase, even though you're not exposed to it much. I think it'll probably stay the same. It might even creep up a little bit. And then there's going to be 6 to 8 weeks here of all heavy work, really. So your training splits here aren't chest and arms and core and shoulders. It'll be horizontal push, horizontal pull. You might have like heavy low body, and then you might have heavy upper body. Then it might be heavy low body again, but a lower volume. It'll be definitely taking volume into account, right? But it'll all be heavy stuff there. Not talking about what muscles you're working, but talking about movements you're developing, like vertical, horizontal push, rotational core, those type of things. And then in the athletic one, it'll be loads of single leg, loads of off-center stuff, loads of kind of odd stuff, plyometrics, bounces and bounding and things. The athletic stuff doesn't take that much out of you as far as a recovery point of view, because you're not going anywhere near failure, and it's not going to be that heavy either. So everything's going to be, like I said, off-center or moving fast. So that goes well with your riding. And we'll talk about the cardio aspect of this now and how they work with each other. But because that stuff isn't costing you a few days recovery, I'm expecting you there 6 weeks before the race season to be riding 3 or 4 times a week, uplifting with Stephen at the bike park and going wherever you can and racing. So that's the main focus, all right?
Can I ask, hypertrophy, what sort of activities, what sort of things?
Curls, bench press, flies, lateral raises, trying to burn muscle groups. Yeah. So to build muscle, you need 3 things. You need the muscle to be burning at the time that you're working it. You want it to be a little bit pumped in between the sets so you feel like you've worked it. And the next day, you've had a workout. So if you don't feel any one of those 3 things, you haven't stimulated any muscle growth at all. Feel one of the 3? Yeah, you may have done a little bit.
What if you can't walk out of bed?
Well, if you can't walk out of bed, yeah, well, that's your problem, isn't it? But you will build conditioning. You know what it's like. After a few sessions, it's okay, isn't it? And I'm not, I know you're going to be riding 2 days a week here anyway, so I know your exposure to snap power and stuff is always going to be there. But I'm not concerned about how well you're riding this far from the off-season. If you watch the pros, they really start, when you see them in February and March, at bike parks every weekend, they're really starting to wind up the pace. But back here, you see them abroad cycling, just head down in the dark, really. Yeah, trying to build a big base. So the more muscle you can build here, it's not going to be a huge amount. You might put on 2 kilos. The more muscle you can build here, the more potential you have for strength and power there. And then the more strength and power you can build, the more athletic you can potentially be later on. Whereas
Sessions per week are we talking about? So what
3 or 4,
3 or 4?
yeah.
And then that you would then rotate on a 2-weekly basis, because you've got 5 hypertrophy and 1 strength and power. If you do 3 a week, then
Yeah, this is all just scribbled in. Yeah, we'll iron out the fine details later, yeah. But there'll probably be 3 or 4 workouts a week. If you need to skip one because you're tired from riding, that's fine.
So you're basically pushing your muscle groups, and then the strength is really putting the weight on.
Yeah.
And then you've got the cardio athletic stuff towards the end.
Yeah, right. So you build some muscle, turn that new muscle you have into new strength and power, and then into new athleticism.
so you first build new muscles, then you make them strong, and then you kind of
Right.
integrate it all.
Which is the problem, right? So when people, Loic Bruni 2 weeks ago put out a post, he's doing all this really obscure off-center stuff with elastic everywhere. That's that stuff. then people say, oh, well, if Loic's doing that, should I be doing that? I go, yeah, but you haven't seen the 4 months beforehand that he's been doing this. And it's a bit irritating that people want to jump into the sport-specific stuff. In fact, you've got to lay down a huge foundation first. Otherwise, that sport-specific stuff's not going to get you anywhere at all.
There's a lot of improving flexibility in that time as well.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, you build muscle, you improve your conditioning, you build, flexibility, mobility, your fitness, strength and power, athletics, right? So if we, this is your barbell stuff, right? Your barbells and dumbbells. If we talk about the cardio aspect underneath it, I'm going to try. I don't know if we can run it. Yeah, I can't see why not, actually. So this is the cardio aspect. Let's call this base building, right? So these are rides. Go on.
Does digging consider as cardio?
No, not really. No. Unless you went like hammer and tongs for 10 minutes and then had a 5-minute recovery and then did it again. It's just, that's activity digging is. I wouldn't put it in a fitness category. It's good for burning calories. But base building is long rides, steady state cardio if you're indoor, not sprints, just sitting there in zone 2, watching something on Netflix, that type of zone, where you'll be able to talk in full and just spinning. So your heart rate will be relatively low compared to doing a sprint, and that builds your base fitness, right? So the bigger the base you can build on a pyramid, I always use that metaphor, the bigger the base of a pyramid, the taller it can go, right? So you build as big a base as possible, and then that means you'll have, again, like the hypertrophy, more potential later on. Whereas if, over here would be, actually, let's scribble this out now so we can talk about all 3 things, right? Let's line this up dead square for now, right? Intervals. And over here is SSE, sports-specific endurance. Base building, intervals, sport-specific endurance. People want to jump straight into intervals, again, because they see bloody Richie Rude or something doing it. But in fact, if you're not fit and you go into intervals, you can only do 2, and you've got to go, or you'll be on your hands and knees, or you'll throw up. So the bigger base you can build, you might be able to do 8 or 10 intervals in a session, the more potential you're going to have later on. That's how you build something from the ground up. These might not line up perfectly. If anything, I may, depending on how much riding you have there, this line here could go either way. So base building, long rides. If you're on a trail ride, don't stop at the end and talk about how the trail went. Just pedal off. Or if you're waiting for someone, pedal in a few circles, try and stay warm and like you're moving. And like I said, if you're on the indoor bike, steady state, just turning the legs at zone 2, which we'll talk about again. Intervals is your intervals between 1 and 6 minutes. Awful stuff, really painful stuff. You can use the, yeah, right at the top. I'm trying to stay there. There is a skill to intervals there. You can't go out on a 6-minute interval like a 10-second sprint and then try and hold on. You'll probably pass away. You'll die. So those build your anaerobic conditioning then to ride from, so you're not falling apart halfway down the track. And sports-specific endurance is riding the bike, really. Like ideally, you wouldn't be doing any more intervals on the bike there. All of that should be downhill. And, if you're riding downhill 3 times a week there, fine. If you only ride once or twice, then you could try and replicate it on an indoor bike or in the gym. But you don't benefit from developing the skill on the indoor bike. You just get the physical adaptation. So, that should be riding. And it will be, because like I said, there's races here. Every weekend you're going to be riding 3 days a week, leading up to the World Cup season or whatever race season it is.
But it makes sense that indoor stuff, November, December, January, you naturally spend more time indoors anyway.
Yeah. Indoor or cross country, just in some thermal leggings and go out for a long time. Road rides, things like that. Anything where you're just doing anything between kind of 1 and 3 or 4 hours, really. Anything that's not an interval, we'll call it that. 40 minutes is fine if you're going on a short trail ride. Or if you're indoors, 40 minutes is certainly fine because you're never cruising down indoors, you're always turning. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
Do you kind of understand what we're doing? Go on.
When let's say I went for a 40-minute ride uphill, would that be, could I do intervals on the way up? So like 6 minutes stop and 6 minutes, and this is quite intense.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Can I benefit from the intervals?
Yep.
Would you do that in the base building phase?
You wouldn't do it in the base building.
I wouldn't target it, no. It will happen in the base building phase because, like I said, these guys are riding all the time anyway.
So you're saying they're better off going for maybe a 1 to 2 hour enduro ride,
Yeah.
and then in January to March they start going on shorter rides, but doing sprints uphill, have a rest.
Yeah, if they're out on trail rides.
Sprint back uphill.
Yeah, right. So you can still do your trail rides, but find some intervals within the trail ride where you're at absolute maximum heart rate, where you can taste blood and stuff, like those horrible things. You know the feeling? Yeah. So, yeah, of course, you're not going to be putting your trail bike away then and then just doing downhill intervals. You can do trail rides, it's just find some intervals in there, you can do it.
And an e-bike would be quite useful in the base building, but it wouldn't be in the interval training.
Turn it off. You can turn it off, it's fine. Yeah.
So in the base building, e-bike will help you stay within that second.
Yeah.
I think e-bike would help everywhere, just so then I can get the rest of my ride again.
Yeah, you just have to be deliberate with it, don't you? Yeah. But
Just thinking in terms of equipment, whether we invest in a road bike or an e-bike or...
okay, I'll probably go for an e-bike because you could do everything on that. You could, if you put some slicker tires on it, it'd be quite quick on the road too, wouldn't it? The zone 2 base building stuff is really difficult to do outdoors because it's too hilly around here. As soon as you hit a hill, you go to zone 4 or 5. That's fine. I'm not really that, we're not Olympic level cyclists here. I'm just a bit of a purist myself, and that's the best way to do it. Indoor you can, but if it's a nice day, go riding, Riding's always a priority every single time, even if it means that you're going to skip a gym session or let's go riding, or it's a nice evening, fine, do that.
Evening sessions with a head torch.
Yeah, right. Just get out, for a long period of time, but try to treat it as a training ride always.
For Charlie in school as well, going out on a bike is going to be nice.
Yeah.
Doing stuff indoors.
Yeah, definitely. The base building is hypertrophy, trying to build some muscle, trying to build some strength and power, turning that into athleticism, building a huge cardiovascular base so you can go in to do more intervals so you'll be better on the bike. And like I said, if you can't ride enough there, then you can simulate it, but I prefer you are riding always. Let me think, I wonder if there's anything I've missed. Any questions? Does it make sense to you what I'm saying? Yeah. Because if you buy into what we're doing, then it's a bit easier to follow. It's not just I'm telling you what to do, listen to me. It's I want you to understand what's happening as well. And I want you to understand the flaws that other people make is when they say, you should be doing your intervals, go, yeah, I'm going to be, it's later. So if you know what the program is and people call you up on it and go, should you be doing bicep curls for a mountain bike? You go, yeah, I'm trying to build some muscle. I'm going to do strength and power later. You can kind of defend yourself a little bit with a bit of, articulation. Let me think. So like you said, Ina, there are races, right? In that blue zone, let's call it.
And potentially in the green zone, depending if we manage to get places.
All the way back here. Some like...
No, not in the green zone.
Oh, no. Yeah, fine. But did you know what I meant by peaking? There might be some races that you want to target or a certain series. And, if there was a race like there, you could say, well, we can bring all this down, but then you're shortening the amount of base you can build. And, maybe on that one you can just run off talent and what you've already built.
In terms of nutrition, I imagine that in the green and red phases, really high in protein and carbs.
You're absolutely right. So, for building muscle, you have to be in a calorie surplus. If you're in a calorie deficit, your body won't allow any build. It'll be trying to reserve everything because it thinks it's in some type of panic mode. So to be in which is quite straightforward to be in a calorie surplus. Of course, you want to hit your protein as well, which is about 2 grams per kilo of body weight you weigh a day. So it's about 120 grams each or so. The only thing you've got to be careful of is if the base building cardio puts you in a calorie deficit, you're going to throw it all out the window. And it can do that, If you're going out on 2 or 3 4-hour cross-country rides a week, it's going to be really hard to meet those calories. You just got to be aware of it and just try and eat as much as you can.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
This is where we need to work on with Nathan.
I do like an hour-long hill climb for the ants track.
Yeah.
Or digging, but I don't think I'll be doing 3-4 hour cross-country rides.
Well, you never know, do you? You never know. If it's a nice Sunday or something, you might go out this afternoon. So you need to be in a calorie surplus here and there, and then, that's your riding. Yeah, protein is a priority back here, because otherwise you just want to get the most out of what you're doing, and it's going to be pretty hard, pretty painful, But when you start to see the results coming in and you're growing, it just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It makes it easier. Any other questions? don't think I've missed anything. It all kind of makes sense. Like I said, you know, these lines, they might move as we go through.
In terms of timing, so how long are the sessions? Because Nathan, it's kind of working towards that lifestyle, like I said, outside of being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Your whole life revolves around.
Yeah, you live and breathe it. Yeah.
So it's in terms of managing your sleep, your timetable for when you eat, what you eat, when you train, what time of the day you train in terms
Yeah.
of your energy levels line. So how do we move from where we are now, where everything is just ad hoc, to being ready for World Cups and living that lifestyle in 6 months' time?
Well, the training's going to be scheduled on the app. So that's something to follow.
Suggestions of timings in the day as well, if I need to know.
Yeah, well, do you know when you're best? Are you an evening person or an afternoon person for training?
Not quite sure.
Yeah, because I'm okay mid-morning and quite late, but in the afternoon I'm no good, and I know that. So I wouldn't be able to dictate to him when is the best time. It's when his energy levels, yeah. And you'll figure all that out.
Charlie's will be different because he has to do it after school.
Yeah. So you know, basically, when you come off the bus or however you get from home from school, don't go in the house and sit down, isn't it? Open your app and go in and do it. Because if you sit down, then...
Take a protein shake.
Yeah. Yeah, take a protein shake, go in and do it. Put some music on. You can smash out these hypertrophy workouts on your own in 35 minutes, probably. You're just trying to burn up the muscle and then leave it. And you leave a couple of days before you hit that muscle group again. Hypertrophy training is really simple. Really, really easy.
Nathan will need to be a bit more like on it himself, whereas for Charlie he can tag on to the routine he has for school.
Yeah,
But you kind of need to create your own routine and be more disciplined in that sense.
yeah. Have a diary. Like, I'm terrible for it. So in my diary I have, if I have to post some content, for example, I have to write it in Monday 1 o'clock, film that content in red with exclamation marks next to it, film it, and when it's there I respect it more. So I wake up every day and I write a list and I get on with that list.
This is one of the things that we need to work on now in terms of time management.
Yeah.
Because Nathan's is really, really time blind and has no idea what day of the week it is.
Yeah, like you said, Charlie's got that built-in solid structure to his school and he has to go.
And now
Yeah,
we need to work on that with Nathan.
yeah. Okay. Any questions about this?
No, I'm pretty happy with it.
Does it make sense to you? Yeah.
Does it make sense to you, Charlie?
Useful if you add like what kind of rough ideas of how long each workout would be in each phase and the base building, like if we know 3.
I'm going to keep all the workouts under an hour. They'll all be under an hour.
But how long are how many times do you need to go for a ride in the base building phase, like the long rides?
2, probably.
2 a week, maybe 1.5 hours max.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
can we get Charlie on a stationary bike for the intervals instead of just running?
Yeah.
No, he didn't say 3 to 4 hour rides.
Potentially could be up to
Up to, yeah, I suppose.
The minimum?
minimum 40 minutes of sustained heart rate up there. You know, if you're stopping and on the trails to watch your mate come down and stuff, that's against the object of it. You need to be out and treat it as a cross-country ride where you don't stop and you have your water ready. And yeah, but up, you know, if you're on a road ride, for example, you could be 4 hours.
Yeah.
You know, me and Jordan last year did 8.5 one day, 8.5 hour ride, 100 miles. Canary Islands, yeah, we're going again next month.
For building like long-term endurance sort of thing, really. Isn't it?
Yeah, so the adaptations you build here, right, let's talk about the base building and cardio. The adaptations are, within the muscle cell, you create more mitochondria density through doing this low, steady state stuff. Mitochondria is responsible for energy production later on. But you also build more capillary density, which is responsible for getting blood through to the extremities. When you're doing intervals, you can't build those adaptations. Because imagine you're trying to, I don't know, if you're doing anything, right? If you're digging and they say, oh, you've only got a minute to dig this corner, it's not going to be a very good corner, is it? But they say to take the afternoon, build it as best you can. You know, you find a routine, you find a rhythm. That's what your body does. Okay, we're in a nice steady state. Let's start building this density of things we need for later on. And then here, the adaptations are all chemical changes, right? So they're hydrogen ion buffering, improved glycogen storage, improved anaerobic enzymes. So those 3 things are chemical changes. They're not physical changes that you could measure and feel. So the intervals, the adaptation to intervals, you can get really fast. 2 weeks that you got them. But it also goes the other way. So if you do 2 weeks of hard intervals and you do nothing for a month, they're gone. And then here, I guess, you spoke about before, just ride. That's the most sport-specific thing you can do. And if you can't ride, you can try and replicate it in the gym. But that's not ideal, But I think, if it's really wet or you can't get to W, whatever it is, then you can try and replicate in the gym to maintain the adaptations. We're probably over here in this athletic phase will be some exposure to hypertrophy, not a huge amount. Because otherwise, you don't want to stop hypertrophy and then not do it again until the next off-season. There will be an intermittent exposure to it.
Kind of repeat that, but in a very shorter one.
Yeah.
In the race season.
And then in the season, it's maintenance. If you've got a week in between races, maybe on the Monday or the Tuesday, you'll do some heavy work because that's further away that's as far away from the next race as possible. Then you'd go like less heavy and fast towards the race. If you've got 3 weeks off, okay, let's do a week of hypertrophy. Let's expose your body to that, then go strength, then power again. So the maintenance in the season is how much time have we got? What do you need to do? Do you need to recover? Are you injured?
Is it worth at any point to measure, like for instance, get them on a watt bike? I don't know with Tass, if he's got a chance to go to uni and get all the measurements on.
If you can.
I know what's his name, Alan Milray has got a setup as well.
Yeah.
Getting a session booked in with him.
Well, testing can be done for a few things. Some people will test athletes at the start or as a marketing thing to say, right, we've tested you, these are your numbers, I'm going to write you a program to improve them. Some people use testing as a form of, let's test here, let's test here, let's test here, let's see if the numbers are going where they should.
It's more like as a measurement for him to know that he's on the right.
Yeah, and it's fun and it's a bit of content and stuff, right? And it's kind of serious. We can do all that stuff in the sports science department here at Abbey Uni.
Where's it? What bike?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Oh, well, we've got watt bikes in the gym, but at the uni there's VO2 max and stuff like that.
You can measure.
Yeah, so, and I'm desperate to get ties with them here, but there's no one in charge at the moment.
Or maybe the people from Tass can help.
Yeah, maybe. That's just 4 hours there and back, isn't it?
Because we would have to go to Swansea if they offer that. It would be probably easier to go and do it here.
Of course. Give me some time. Let me see if I can get hold of them.
And then maybe you've got the contact details of that chap, is it Gareth or the other one?
From TAS,
Yeah, Ashley Lloyd, I think, would be the one.
something like that. You exchange a couple of emails. And then leading up to the season, there's other stuff like hydration testing and things we can do. Find out what type of a sweater you are, which is something I've really buried myself in recently, and it's a fantastic, really interesting field, actually.
I don't think in terms of hydration he's doing enough, especially with the water bottle.
You can get that pretty much dead on now with the new modern testing. You can test how much sweat comes out of you per hour, so you know how much fluid to replace. You can also test how much salt comes out of you per litre of sweat, which is a really, really interesting number. Because a low salt sweater would be 200 milligrams of salt per litre of sweat. And a high salt sweater could be 2,000 milligrams per litre. That's 10 times different, right?
And then you think about electrolytes having to recover.
That's exactly right, yeah. So the main electrolytes are magnesium, potassium, calcium, and salt. Out of the electrolytes that make it to the skin, 80% of that is salt. And salt is the only electrolyte that you can't draw from your own stores. The other three you can. You have stores of them. Salt you have to keep ingesting.
Magnesium, potassium, and which one?
Calcium. But you have stores that are available. Salt you don't. You have to keep ingesting it manually. So finding out that number. If we found out that you were a high salt sweater and a high volume sweater, you're at a massive disadvantage in sport if you didn't know those pieces of information. Because 3 hours in, you're cramping up. You know, you're going to be shutting down. So we'll get all that stuff done later before the season. And
So do you taste the sweat or something and then
there's a device they put on you that measures how much salt comes out. They rub like a gel on, which stimulates the sweat gland. Really interesting. No, that's in precision hydration. But that's Bournemouth. But
Was it called precision hydration?
precision fuel and hydration.
I'll ask Tass if they do anything.
They won't have the same testing thing because these guys have it patented. They had a breakthrough. But there are testing stations throughout the country. It's not all down in Bournemouth. And I have quite a good relationship with them now because they're supporting the British team, which I'm going away with next week. We took all the athletes down there, and it was really interesting results, actually. Cool, happy? Take a photo of that. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons, right? So when you're doing bicep curls and flies, when someone messages you on Instagram and says, oh, should you be doing flies for a mountain biker? You say, I'm actually in a build phase. I have a plan. I'm building strength and power later. You know?
Actually had no one comment on my training.
You taking that picture, Charlie? Yeah.
Okay.
It all makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that's how you develop.
You're building your base, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then you get you push yourself then with strength and your breathing.
Yeah. And it's like, and you don't put a hot tub on soil, do you? You put a concrete foundation down. It's exactly the same. You build a house, you don't buy the solar panels first, do you?
And it's pointless building muscle if you then don't integrate those muscles into coordination and actually.
Don't turn that off.
And in terms of being able to make them move fast.
Yeah.
Because as an athlete, you don't want to be just bulky, you want to be, your muscles need to be used.
Right, yeah. So if you trained hypertrophy all the way to there, you'd be less athletic. Yeah. And if you just trained athletic from here, you'd have no base to build the athleticism from. So this works really well.
Season and an off season, they need to kind of interval it like that and periodize it.
Yeah.
If I was to do training, I wouldn't have to do anything like that.
Oh, it's a general public.
Generally, just keep building.
Yeah, so let me explain one other thing to you. So strength and power, for example, and base building cardiovascular training interfere with each other. So if you're doing heavy, powerful stuff in the gym and going out on 3-hour rides, your body would be going, what are you trying to do to me here? And it would probably abandon that adaptation and go with the bigger stimulus. However, like you just said, that's what I do. I do a lot of strength and power, and I do a lot of base building cardio. However, I don't have 20 weeks. I've got years in my life. That's the way I like to train. When you've only got 6 months, which is actually a really long time for an off-season, when you've got a set amount of time, you want to get the most out of the training as possible using the modern training methods with current data supported by.
So actually they've got a massive privilege in a way that they have a nice long off season, they can build in the best possible way.
That's one of the main reasons I like training mountain bikers. In motorsport, there's 6 weeks. That is a 6-week unbroken section in world level motors. Yeah. And so you're very limited, but this is incredible.
But in the long run, that also will make mountain bikers much more, give them more longevity as an athlete.
Depending on what they do the next season, they're talking about 14 races over.
Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
No, so that all makes sense. There are training things that interfere with each other, which I've accounted for here, that interference effect. Nothing of these. Interval training pretty much goes well with everything. You know, because intervals will stimulate muscle growth too. So the big things you need to watch out, strength and base building are the biggest interferers. So people who compete in powerlifting, they don't even park their car in the corner of the car park of a supermarket because they don't want to walk 100 meters. They want to do as little as possible because they want all of that. Yeah, like elite level, you know?
Also, that's why they will be in the disabled
Yeah, that's why. And no one's going to mess with them. Yeah. And no one's going to mess with them. Cool. Happy?
That's it.
Yeah. And remember, riding takes priority over everything. Does that say riding? No, it says ridding.
No, it's riding. Reading a studies.
Ride. Is there an I in it? An E?
I-D-I-N-G.
No, there's no I before E. That is the most important, right? That you just ride the bike. That is more important than any fitness program you'll ever have, right? Ride. That's where you can have the most adaptation. If you can do it in one of the styles like we're planning here. And this is called block periodization. You wouldn't do that with someone who's brand new to training. It doesn't work. Because if you send a complete amateur into 3 months of hypertrophy, they're fucked. Yeah. Yeah, so they'd have to miss sessions because they're in so much pain. Yeah. And then ultimately their training volume goes down. So last year was getting the barbell in the hand. We could have gone into weekly periodization. So this would all be 1 week repeated. But I think block periodization will be fine with the boys. And that's where the magic really happens, when you can oversaturate that, and oversaturate that. Really to tell your body what you want from it. Cool. Good. Lesson over.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Before we go, can you please push me that